welcome to the channel. We sincerely appreciate your visit. I'm your host, Jeff Smith. We hope and pray you gain something by stopping by. If you do enjoy the content, we ask that you hit the like button and subscribe. Today, I will be breaking a social rule, or a rule commonly associated with polite communication. Despite never considering it to be a topic I would delve into in this ministry, I'm going to dip my foot into the waters of politics. I'm going to share my perspective on what we are witnessing in the world of politics today. I will be doing so from a logical perspective rather than succumbing to the pressure of speaking from one side of the political aisle. I'll be doing so by using sound reasoning. With that, I'll get on with it. Some say it is impolite to speak about politics and religion. That makes sense for a variety of reasons. I'll get into a couple of them. I'd venture to say that the reason most abstain from those topics of conversation is because they often lead to arguments. And you could have a lengthy discussion regarding the plethora of reasons for why that is the reaction commonly elicited from the recipient of another individual's political or religious opinions. Some might inaccurately describe my messages as religious in nature. The truth is, my intention is not to speak about religion. What's most important to me and my partner in this ministry, and what we hope to get across to you, is all about relationship. The Lord desires an intimate relationship with each of us rather than what we call religion. If you've looked into the Gospels or the writings of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you quickly ascertain that the Jewish religious leaders were Jesus' most ardent adversaries. Clearly, he was about something altogether different than religion or what they were all about. He wants a relationship with us where we get up close and personal with him. On the other side of the coin is politics. To my knowledge, outside of referencing a few incidences or making a few very general comments about the current condition of politics in the United States and the antics of some of our politicians, I rarely talk about it. Well, I feel compelled to go there today. And I'll begin by sharing a quote that fits this discussion like a glove. Jonathan Swift is credited with the quote I will share in a moment. He was an interesting individual. According to Britannica, he was, quote, an Anglo-Irish author who was the foremost prose satirist in the English language, unquote. He is most recognized as the author of the novel Gulliver's Travels. He was born in 1667. Regardless, some of his quotes have been used in one shape or form to this day. One such quote that possesses incredible insight and, as I previously suggested, is certainly apropos for this conversation is the following. Reasoning will never make a man correct an ill opinion, which by reasoning he never acquired. Over the course of time, that statement has morphed into a variety of very similar statements while still being attributed to Swift. Initially, it might have been inadvertently misquoted. As time went on, I suppose some might have believed it necessary to make use of more contemporary language to ensure the clarity of the statement. According to Quote Investigator, Congressman Fisher Ames, an influential voice of the Federalists, wrote a version of this saying, but he disclaimed credit with the phrase, I have heard it remarked. I have heard it remarked that men are not to be reasoned out of an opinion that they have not reasoned themselves into. The case, though important, is simple. Government does not subsist by making proselytes to sound reason or by compromise and arbitration with its members, but by the power of the community compelling the obedience of individuals. And without focusing too much time on Swift's statement and the subsequent explanation, I have to agree that the power of the community does compel people, especially in a society where cancel culture and virtue signaling are prevalent. I am unable to be persuaded otherwise. Clearly, mainstream media sources have been extremely effective in communicating a particular party's opinions, positions, talking points, and narrative in such a strong and uncompromising way as to suggest it is the gospel truth. And refusing to concede or rejecting their tenets results in your cancellation and or being labeled a variety of vile names such as racist, bigot, xenophobe, homophobe, transphobe, misogynist, and so on. Society is a powerful influencer. So powerful is its influence that sound reasoning is rarely the impetus behind people arriving at certain conclusions. For some, sound reasoning rarely enters into the decision-making process. The conclusions some reach or the positions they maintain are nothing more than the regurgitation of what society has deemed as truth or popular opinion. And even though they did not arrive at those conclusions based on sound reasoning, their positions are firmly embraced such that it is rarely the case that one will effectively reason them out of those positions, as erroneous as they may be. Similar to society's influential power is that of our parents, and in many cases, rightly so. How many people do you know who are members of a particular political party or a particular religious affiliation, organization, or denomination because their parents were? How many people have you heard making the statement, "I was raised as a Democrat or a Republican, and I will die a Democrat or a Republican"? Regardless of how fallible their beliefs may be on a particular matter, the party comes first with many politicians today. How many people have you heard making the statement, "I was raised a Catholic, Baptist, Lutheran, or Assemblies of God, etc., and I will die in that denomination"? I've heard it more times than I care to count. It wasn't by sound reasoning that they made the choice. Therefore, more often than not, sound reasoning won't change their minds. On those infrequent occasions that you identify a dissenter from their parents, it's often because they were compelled by the greater community, popular opinion, or the narrative of the associated political or religious group. Sadly, for many, sound reasoning is not the impetus behind their arrival at a conclusion or a change in their position. By no means am I attempting to suggest there aren't exceptions. There are exceptions to nearly every, if not every, rule. I suppose I'm an exception to that rule. And I know many other people who need to see the facts, the evidence, before they grab hold of the narrative being spewed from the lips of politicians, liberal mainstream media, preachers, teachers, televangelists, and the like. Once again, more and more, that appears to be the exception according to my observations. There are other contributing factors to our refusal or failure to change our positions or change our minds. However, the way I see it from my experience is that the two main players in this are societal influence or pressure and parental or familial influence or pressure. Now, all that said, I'm going to get into some facts about politics. I ask for your indulgence in listening to this video in its entirety in the hope that it will inspire you to use sound reasoning when selecting your candidate for the upcoming presidential election. I feel it's extremely important for people to abstain from voting based on their parents' political party or a particular political party's agenda or narrative. It's a personal matter. It's a personal decision. Who we choose, the name or names we select when stepping into the voting booth, should be based on some absolutely necessary research and sound reasoning. As a side note, I ask Christians to indulge me a bit further when I suggest that your political choices should be based on your relationship with God and what His Word tells us. In other words, it's difficult to separate politics and religion because our religion, or better yet, our relationship with God, should take precedence over anything and everything. As such, it should drive our political decision-making process. Our relationship with God should influence our political choices and all our life choices, for that matter. The way we vote has potential to change laws, which is particularly important when those laws stand in stark contrast to the Word of God. I know I'm likely stepping on some toes saying that, but if God isn't the one who influences us as Christians, who is? We have to come to the realization that any alternative to God is unacceptable. Incidentally, I came to that conclusion by sound reasoning and the Word of God. I'll get into politics by discussing a few topics, actually hot-button topics, and you can decide what makes the most sense. Before I do, please allow me to preface it with this. I am a registered independent. I vote for a particular candidate because their positions on matters relevant to me are as closely related to mine and what I believe to be the best for my family and the country. And I would like to believe the positions I hold near and dear to me are derived from sound reasoning, the Word of God, and what I believe the Lord desires for us. Let's take a look at racism. As you are likely aware, voices from the Democratic side of the political aisle have frequently proclaimed Donald Trump is against black people. According to them, he's a racist. It's been a major talking point, particularly while Democratic candidates of various types are on their respective campaign trails. You definitely hear that from mainstream liberal media. Rather than taking their word for it, just as sound reasoning has been defined and dictates, we should think logically and critically, using evidence, arguments, and principles to support or challenge claims, decisions, and arguments. Objectively speaking, during Donald Trump's term as president, he signed into law the historic First Step Act, in which 90% of those who had their sentences reduced were Black Americans. From Trump's election to February 2020, 1.4 million Black Americans found jobs, and we witnessed record low unemployment in that demographic. In addition, economic success among Black Americans was witnessed at unprecedented levels. Does that sound like a racist approach? Would a racist strive to witness the employment and financial successes of Black Americans? President Trump was the impetus behind many successes experienced by Black Americans during his 4-year term. I could go on, but for the sake of time, I'll share just a few more successes in the Black American community specific to HBCUs. If you are unfamiliar with that acronym, HBCU stands for Historically Black Colleges and Universities. According to Wikipedia, historically Black colleges and universities are institutions of higher education in the United States that were established before the Civil Rights Act of 1964 with the intention of primarily serving African Americans. According to an October 2020 press release with the heading Trump Campaign Press Release, Fact, President Trump's policies have delivered for Black Americans, one can find the following information. The Trump administration provided more than $500 million in loans to HBCUs through the Capital Financing Program. President Trump worked with HBCUs to protect $80 million in Title III carryover funding. President Trump signed the Future Act into law, which permanently funds HBCUs and simplifies the FAFSA application. In 2018, President Trump signed a budget deal which forgave more than $300 million in debt owed by 4 HBCUs impacted by natural disasters and provided $10 million in loan payment deferments for schools that face financial difficulties, including HBCUs. President Trump worked with Congress to lift the ban on Pell Grants on summer classes. Donald Trump has been labeled a racist and bigot because allegedly he has made racist and bigoted remarks. The opposing party's greatest attack from this angle has been based on Trump's comments about Mexicans and Muslims entering our country. Once again, sound reasoning dictates we think logically and critically using evidence, arguments, and principles to support or deny a particular position. The following was found in a Time magazine article authored by Katie Riley that was released August 31st, 2016. Donald Trump kicked off his presidential bid more than a year ago with harsh words for Mexico. "They are not our friend, believe me," he said, before disparaging Mexican immigrants. "They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists. And some, I assume, are good people." No doubt it's straight up. He didn't mince his words. But is it accurate? He didn't say that about every resident of Mexico. He made that statement regarding many of the migrants from Mexico who are illegally crossing our borders. Have we not witnessed Mexican drug cartel influence and activity among many of those who have illegally crossed our border? Is fentanyl not being illegally transported by Mexicans and other groups into America with greater frequency and in larger quantities through our southern border? Have illegal migrants from Mexico not been found guilty of murder, rape, and other crimes, including sex trafficking with children? It can't be denied. You hear it on a regular basis. There have been several high-profile crimes and high-profile cases that were perpetrated by Mexican illegal migrants who were convicted perpetrators of multiple crimes on multiple occasions who were released back into the community. Terrorist activities have been associated with residents of Middle Eastern countries. Islam is the prevailing religion in the Middle East. The fact is, in many cases, those terrorists were Muslims. Should we refrain from being on high alert with certain groups because it might hurt someone's feelings? Should we not be at least a bit skeptical of certain groups, and shouldn't we scrutinize them if they have demonstrated a tendency toward terrorist activity? We're foolish to think we're privy to intel that a president sees. That is the likely reason why presidents tend to gray so quickly and age so quickly when in office. They get a lot of information no one ever sees. Their eyes are promptly opened. Trump didn't say his concerns or comments apply to every Mexican or every Muslim. Listen to the exact words that came out of his mouth rather than what his opponents claim he said. In making comments deemed to be anti-Mexican and anti-Muslim, Donald Trump was stressing the point that we need a secure border. We need a wall because there are certain groups who have demonstrated a propensity towards crime and terrorist activity. He stated it during his campaign and during his presidency because his eyes had been opened to the truth. Please understand, by no means am I opposed to Mexicans or Muslims. These statements aren't about that at all. Nothing could be farther from the truth. By way of sound reasoning, one can readily conclude that there are individuals in those groups who have come to this country with bad intentions, just as there are individuals who have come to this country with the best of intentions. I think a real obvious clue as to the nature and intentions of anyone who illegally crosses our border is the fact that they did so illegally. That should be an obvious concern that raises red flags. If you readily and willingly break the laws of the country you wish to make your residence, something is very wrong. Now, speaking of the wall, as a result of Trump pushing for a secure wall to be built on our southern border, he was further viewed as a racist. How many of you have a wall, fence, or other barrier around your property? Why? Are you a racist? Was your contractor, tract, or production home builder a racist for having a barrier in place before you purchased your home? If a wall wasn't included in your purchase, was that because your contractor or tract or production home builder was not a racist or they were extremely virtuous? Or was your desire for a barrier around your home or property nothing more than a means by which to outline your property and to minimize the visitation of unwanted guests? They make signs that say trespassing, private property, violators will be prosecuted for a reason. The barrier merely shows the line beyond which you will be found guilty of trespassing and why you can be prosecuted. What? The same explanations don't apply to a country that houses many residents? We have a border between the United States and Canada. Why isn't anyone throwing around racist accusations to those in support of it, or why are there far less complaints about it? While using sound reasoning and viewing things objectively, bear in mind there has been a significant uptick in virtue signaling. Many people don't know the facts and simply jump on the racist accusation bandwagon because it is a mechanism by which to virtue signal or make themselves look better. Now, another hot button topic is abortion. Opponents of Donald Trump argue that he wishes to take away women's rights. In the past, I've spoken about my position on abortion. For now, let's focus on Donald Trump's position. Mr. Trump believes it should be left at the state level. That is precisely what occurred when the Supreme Court eliminated the federal constitutional right to abortion when they overturned Roe v. Wade. The truth is, it was unconstitutional because there is no wording in the 14th Amendment that supports it. It appeared to be an enormous victory for pro-life advocates. However, that remains to be seen. Some states have banned or severely restricted abortion, while others are vehemently protecting it. Something to consider before leaving this topic is a position held by many pro-choice advocates that a fetus is not a life. However, people from both sides of the pro-life versus pro-choice debate generally become outraged when hearing about the untimely homicide of a pregnant woman. In America, regardless of how much we've changed, pregnant women are honored and respected largely because of the life that is in them. We give up our seats for them. Even those who don't make it a practice to open doors for women, open doors for pregnant women. When they are murdered or they lose their life and that of the life of the unborn baby in their womb, it is referred to as a double homicide, and the perpetrator is sentenced accordingly. Why is the fetus considered a life in that case, but not where abortion is concerned? It makes you go, There are many other things I can discuss, but I will get to the most obvious information that should make your decision relatively easy if using sound reasoning. Sometimes we miss the forest through the trees. Sometimes we can get lost in all the extraneous rhetoric, the liberal narrative, the lies and deceit. It can cloud our perspectives. Therefore, what I'm about to say will be presented in its unadulterated form. It will be presented in the most fundamental way possible. Here I go. Are you better off now or when President Trump was in office? In other words, if you voted for Joe Biden, how did that turn out for you? Do you have regrets? Was the so-called unifier a genuine unifier, or was that only one of many talking points repeatedly spewed from the mouths of Biden supporters during his campaign? I'll address the latter question first. As a result of Biden's policies and agenda, we have more division now than ever before. We are in more conflicts now than ever before. We're even confused about how we should respond to the Israeli-Hamas conflict. But that's a topic for another discussion. Are we better off now? Take a look at our basic needs for security and sustenance. Is border security better under Biden with his open border policy? Is our military stronger under Biden? Are home prices or the cost of rent better under Biden? Are gas prices better under Biden? Are grocery prices better under Biden? Are utility prices better under Biden? Is the economy better under Biden? Are inflation rates better under Biden, who has consistently lied about inflation rates being over 9% when he took office? Actually, Donald Trump left office with inflation rates at 1.4%. And Biden's decisions have been the fuel that ignited the inferno that has been our skyrocketing inflation rates since. Just like the last answer, the answer to all the questions is a resounding no. It's not better with Joe Biden for many reasons. And by all means, don't embrace the popular narrative that suggests he will make things better if elected president for 4 more years. Just on the surface, one can readily see that it is unlikely Joe Biden and his administration will do anything to improve our current condition. His track record as president and while in the Senate for 36 years doesn't support it. He has crippled the country that I love and in which I am proud to be a resident. In addition to all that, and all that is extremely important, with all due respect to Joe Biden, he lacks the mental capability to effectively function in the role of POTUS. I am sincere when I say no disrespect is intended. I wouldn't wish cognitive issues on anyone. However, you would do a disservice to the individual who struggles with that malady if you failed to address it and to intercede on their behalf. It's baffling to me why in the world his family is not strongly stressed to him and all parties involved his need to step down. I can't assume they haven't, but you can't assume they haven't taken it to the next level because he's still in office. Maybe that has something to do with Kamala Harris and the obvious incompetence she has clearly demonstrated in the roles in which she has been placed. But that's another topic for another discussion. I'm a registered nurse. I have spent a significant portion of my career working with adults. Truth is, I have spent more time with the geriatric population than any other, and I'm glad I have had the opportunity. Unfortunately, I have witnessed the signs and symptoms of cognitive decline, dementia, Lewy body dementia, and Alzheimer's, to name a few cognitive disorders. At a certain point, the afflicted routinely demonstrate what is referred to as dementia posturing, which involves stiff movements, a shuffling gait or walk, and a hunched posture. Again, with all due respect, I'm sorry he has been affected in this manner, but doesn't Joe Biden walk just like that? In addition, doesn't he publicly demonstrate all the other characteristics of a cognitive issue that can't be simply passed off as being age-related? You decide. If you have witnessed any of his speeches over the past few years, have you, like me, witnessed his memory difficulties, trouble thinking clearly, difficulty maintaining attention, difficulty speaking or fumbling over his words that are beyond his stuttering issue, difficulty finding his way around or leaving a platform, agitation, aggression, mood swings, and difficulty following instructions? I'm not happy to say it. I'm saddened by it. But I can't deny that I've witnessed them all in Joe Biden and I've witnessed an ever-increasing incidence of those signs and symptoms. It's really quite sad. Once again, I don't wish that on anyone. And it certainly isn't funny. Shame on people who make fun of him. I hate it. And shame on those individuals who are close to him and choose to ignore it or cover it up. It can't be denied, and it must be addressed. Unfortunately, it appears the only way that will happen is if we vote against him. Now, you may not like Donald Trump. You may believe he should more effectively choose his battles. He should cut back on the counterpunching for which he is so well known. You may believe he should shut his pie hole. You may think he's a male chauvinist pig who has disrespected his wives. You may entertain all kinds of opinions about him, whether justified or not. I don't know him personally. I do understand the concerns some folks entertain. Again, I don't know him. I might not want to go camping or fishing with him or participate in other activities with him any more than you do. I have no idea. I don't select a presidential candidate, or any candidate for that matter, based on the inaccurate assumption that I will be hanging out with them, based on the inaccurate assumption that they will be my bestie. I choose them because they speak to what is important to me. I investigate their track record. I ascertain if their words coincide with their actions. I use sound reasoning to make my decision. What I can tell you is that every interview I view with objective people who know Donald Trump, they speak highly about him, at least for the most part. I'm an MMA and UFC fan. Donald Trump supported Dana White, current UFC CEO, during an extremely challenging time in UFC history. Dana White can't rave enough about the assistance Donald Trump provided the organization and its owners. They might have tapped out if it wasn't for Donald Trump. Dana White hasn't forgotten it. You can check out videos to substantiate that assertion. Current and former athletes speak highly about Donald Trump. Herschel Walker and Jack Brewer speak highly about him. I know of athletes who have spoken with employees of Donald Trump. They said he was a good boss. He even went so far as to offer financial assistance to people who couldn't pay for funerals or other important events. On occasion, he just outright paid for it. His kindness wasn't limited to white people. He demonstrated the same degree of kindness to Black Americans. I heard a black man say that he took a loan from Donald Trump because no financial institution would give him one. In the end, when he was ready to pay his debt, Donald Trump forgave it. This was a black man. Who does that? For anyone, for that matter. You can say that's all nonsense and fictitious. Let's say it is. You still have to look at where we were and where we are now. You still have to look at how much better things were in the Trump administration and how terrible they have become under the Biden administration that has done whatever possible to change the effective policies Trump put into place. You also have to seriously consider Joe Biden's significant cognitive decline. You also have to question how his administration is refusing to release the tape of his interview that reveals just how much he has declined. At this time, I want to share with you a few excerpts from Robert De Niro's recent speech in New York City. In case you don't know him, which is probably unlikely, he's an actor. According to many, he has a reputation for being a great actor. But he's an actor. He should probably stick to what he's good at. He's not a politician. To my knowledge, he hasn't done anything to improve home or rent prices, gas prices, grocery prices, or utility prices. Rather, he has, unfortunately, sadly and effectively, embarrassed himself with the lies and scare tactics that freely fell from his emotionally charged and deceitful lips. And by his own admission, he delivered that speech for the sake of the Biden-Harris ticket. I wonder if they paid him for his substandard, disjointed, clumsy speech he read off a piece of paper. I have included in the description one of many links to the speech. Check out the first excerpt I want to share with you.
I love this city. I love this city. I don't want to destroy it. Donald Trump wants to destroy not only the city, but the country, and eventually he could destroy the world.
What is De Niro talking about? Donald Trump was born in New York City. He was raised in New York City. He built buildings and supported various projects in New York City. He provided employment of various types for a large number of residents of New York City. He supported tourism in New York City, which positively impacted New York City's economy. Are we supposed to accept De Niro's comments as the gospel truth? Trump has loved the city of New York and has done great things for it. I'm curious, what, if anything, has De Niro done for the city that he claims to love so much? Come on, we have to use sound reasoning when stepping into our respective voting booths. De Niro went on to claim Trump wants to destroy the country and eventually the world. In my lifetime, I'm not sure I've witnessed a president who was so obviously pro-America as Donald Trump. Based upon his words, actions, and policies, it quickly became apparent that he would do more than merely talk the talk, as he did on the campaign trail. It quickly became apparent that he is a nationalist, not a globalist. He's not looking to destroy the world. Donald Trump's focus, Donald Trump's campaign slogan was all about America. Now, I recognize MAGA, or Make America Great Again, conjures up a negative connotation for some. I never understood why that was perceived as negative by anyone residing in the United States. You don't want the country to be great? MAGA doesn't suggest to me that Trump wants to destroy the country or the world. It further emphasizes that he's all about the country and what he can do within his power to make it the great nation it used to be and maybe can be again. Here's a second clip.
Somehow he even got self-styled patriots to support a man who called for terminating the Constitution, and on January 6th rallied an angry mob to threaten democracy, leaving death and destruction in its wake.
How often do we hear flippant, unsubstantiated statements that often go unchecked? Are you as sick of it as I am? Tell the truth and let the people decide. De Niro would not be able to cite one example where Donald Trump said he wished to destroy the Constitution. As I said, Trump is a nationalist. He believes in and supports the Constitution of the United States that actually allows American citizens, like De Niro, to freely and without punishment vomit repeated lies to anyone who cares to listen. De Niro went on to say Trump, quote, rallied an angry mob to threaten democracy, leaving death and destruction in its wake, unquote. Man, that and similar statements have readily and repeatedly fallen from the lips of countless Trump opposers, despite it being repeatedly disproven. They claim his speech incited violence. Unless you actually listen to it or read the transcript, you may believe that bold-faced lie. This is what Trump said to the crowd at his January 6th rally. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. When I heard him say it, and when I've read that particular statement multiple times, I've never suddenly experienced an uncontrollable urge to get violent. I never felt an urgency to take matters into my own hands. On the contrary, it reminds me that we have a constitutional right to speak openly about our concerns since our government, according to our forefathers, was intended to be a government for the people, by the people. Has hatred for Trump blinded the eyes of people such that they can't see his speech was constitutional in nature? Check out this one.
It's no surprise that the murder rate and other violent crimes peaked under Trump and are falling under Biden. And now he's promising to use our own military to attack U.S. citizens. That's the tyrant. That's the tyrant he's telling us he'll be. And believe me, he means it.
Did I hear him correctly? Crime was higher under Trump than Biden? Unfortunately, one of the primary contributors to crime statistics is a group that appears to be in the pocket of Joe Biden. Sadly, I'm talking about the FBI. I have extreme difficulty believing much of anything they have to say. What I can't help but believe is what my eyes tell me. Look at Frisco. Look at Portland. Look at Chicago. Look at New York City. They were formerly beautiful and great cities. You have people urinating and defecating in public right on the street. In some areas of these cities, you have to navigate around needle-tipped, blood-tinged syringes as addicts take the liberty to slam heroin and other illicit drugs while right out in the open. It's hard to believe that with Biden, his open border policies, and the defund the police movement espoused by so many liberal politicians and voters, that these cities and many others aren't boasting crime rates never before witnessed. I guess if you legalize formerly illegal activities, you can say there is a reduction in crime. Oh, and by the way, when did Trump say he was going to use our military to attack U.S. citizens? Bobby De Niro, what are you talking about? It's really quite sad. Hatred for Donald Trump has created an epidemic of myopia. For some, they can't see past the hatred. They're so nearsighted that they can't see a lie when it's right in their face. Last but not least, here's the fourth excerpt from De Niro's speech.
Yesterday was Memorial Day. It's a good time to reflect on how Americans fought and died so that we may enjoy the freedoms guaranteed to us by a democratic government. A government that, as President Lincoln said, of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Under Trump, this kind of government will perish from the earth. I don't mean to scare you. No, wait, maybe I do mean to scare you. If Trump returns to the White House, you can kiss these freedoms goodbye that we all take for granted. And elections, forget about it. That's over. That's done. If he gets in, I can tell you right now, he will never leave. He will never leave. You know that. He will never leave. What does that mean? Is that the country we want to live in? Do we want him running this country and saying, I'm not leaving, I'm dictator for life?
I never cease to be amazed by statements individuals make that are so contrary to what is obvious. I get that we miss the forest through the trees sometimes, but that was ridiculous. Really? Trump is never going to leave office? The women of The View often make the same statement. I suppose they forgot that Trump is a former president who actually left the office of President of the United States? What are they talking about? I suppose they forgot we have a House and Senate. In our country, the president is not allowed to be a dictator. Many things must be passed through Congress. It's our choice. Who will you choose? And when you do, please use sound reasoning rather than rhetoric. Please use sound reasoning rather than political talking points. Please use sound reasoning that will effectively debunk the lies that are embedded in the liberal mainstream media narrative and the lies used by Robert De Niro and the women of The View. And please use sound reasoning before you dismiss this video because Trump was recently found guilty in a trial in which there were numerous examples of impropriety, and one in which legal experts on both sides of the political aisle refer to as a joke. Research it. I'm confident you'll see just how politically biased and based the case was when you discover the judge is a progressive Democrat who donated to Joe Biden in 2020 and to a group called Stop Republicans. In addition, his daughter is the president of a Democratic consulting firm who had Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Adam Schiff as a few on the firm's list of top clients. I could go on about the judge and his daughter, but there are other points to make. You'll also find that the prosecution's lead witness, Michael Cohen, is a former lawyer, convicted felon, and notorious liar who has lied under oath in courtrooms, in Congress, and to the judge and jurors in the Trump trial. If the judge had not squelched portions of Cohen's former lawyer's testimony, Michael Cohen's extremely limited contribution to the prosecution's case would have been given far less merit. If honesty is as important to you as it is to me, there are plenty of things you will find disconcerting about the trial. The last one I'll mention is how Justice Merchan refused to broaden the scope of questioning the defense could ask a campaign finance expert. Alleged campaign finance impropriety was the crux of the prosecution's case. The expert's testimony would have likely dissuaded the Manhattan jurors from a highly Democratic section of the country from following their seemingly preconceived notions about Donald Trump and from pursuing their seemingly predetermined course of action. I make the latter statement partly because few are those who believe Trump could get a fair trial in New York City, especially Manhattan. According to legal experts on both sides of the political aisle, the verdict won't stand up on appeal. So why did they pursue it when the initial allegations fell under the category of misdemeanor until they tweaked them? They were beyond the statute of limitations and were largely based on the testimony of biased Trump haters. Was all of this just a ploy to enable Biden and his more vocal supporters, along with the mainstream liberal media, to be able to call Trump a convicted felon during this campaign season? What a waste of taxpayer money and an overt assault on Lady Justice and the American judicial system. The integrity of one of our branches of government has been severely tainted and assaulted. Your political affiliation doesn't matter if someone strives to win by trickery, lies, and deceit. Forsake the hatred. Put on objective lenses. Use sound reasoning. You would hope for the fairest and most honest trial for yourself or a loved one. It's our choice. Who do you choose? I'll leave it there. God bless you, and have a great week. Thank you for joining us on For the Sake of the Call. We sincerely hope and pray this and every episode is a blessing to you. At the very least, we hope and pray you find it thought-provoking. We consider it an honor to serve our Lord by serving you. If you found something of value with this episode, we ask that you comment, hit the like button, and subscribe. We also ask that you click the notification button so you can be informed of upcoming episodes. If you would like to contact us, please see the link in the description below. May God richly bless you, and may your relationship with Him grow each and every day.